2022 Chairman of the Phoenix Academy, and I hope you take up our invitation to unleash your potential to create value, protect reputation, and empower each other.
A good CFO is a true partner to the CEO. But this means that much more than the traditional roles of ensuring the integrity of the financials and running the finance organization, he has to be first and foremost a business person. He has to have an intimate understanding of the business, competition, markets, and the environment in which they operate. This would allow him to work with the CEO and the rest of management for that matter in determining which strategies and initiatives are most likely to successfully deliver results and thus where they should allocate their funds. If he were just a bean counter, he would soon be replaced by a machine.
A CFO is best positioned to become a CEO, given his strategic and broad view of the business. But transitioning from a CFO to a CEO is not that easy, as only 13% of CFOs make it to the top because the role requires a new set of competencies. Phoenix Academy's Senior Leadership in Finance program provides CFOs the opportunity to enhance their skills through the courses to be delivered by our partner institutions. What makes the course unique is the participation of Phoenix members, some of whom are CFO of the Year awardees or CEOs who will share their real-life experience in applying these competencies in the workplace. Looking back, my journey from CFO to CEO would have been smoother if I had access to this program. For those of you looking for a course that will make you a better CFO or prepare you for the transition to a CEO role, this is the program for you.
Most people think that the role of the CFO revolves around finance and measuring performance in terms of pesos and centavos. But the reality is that in today's modern world, the efficient CFO must learn how to integrate sustainability issues into his or her organization strategy and to push this agenda forward throughout the whole organization as the CFO. So do join the Phoenix Academy's development programs as they tackle the role of the CFO and the role of sustainability. I'd be happy to share my personal experience and journey in understanding why taking care of the environment, addressing societal issues, and being good at governance helps create long-term value. And to appreciate why caring for these issues is not only good for our country, our planet, and our society, but good for our company as well.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 5th General Membership Meeting of Phoenix. This GMM is sponsored by the National Affairs Committee. Here are a few reminders and announcements. The Social Involvement Committee of the Phoenix Foundation cordially invites everyone to a special GMM on May 26, entitled Breaking the Cycle of Poverty. Copies of a handbook on personal finance authored by Mrs. Ellen Cabrera are still available at the Phoenix office. Please contact the Secretariat for interested parties. Relive once again the timeless music from some of the classic movies of all time. Music from Movies Concert, a reprise, presented by the Phoenix Icons. The Tax and Legal Committee will conduct a webinar on new laws on May 24. The Arts and Culture Committee presents the NFTs and Future of Art. This is on May 27 at 2 p.m. The Phoenix Academy launches a Senior Leadership in Finance program which aims to reinforce the CFO's skills and competencies. The premier offering will run from June 16 to August 19. Phoenix would like to acknowledge the year-round sponsors. To the Platinum sponsor, KPMG RG Manabat and Company. To the Gold sponsors, Ayala Land Inc., Philippine Shell Petroleum Corporation, and SGV and Company. And to the patron sponsors, BDO Unibank Inc., PNA Grant Thornton, and San Miguel Corporation. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the official Phoenix social media sites to stay updated. Now let us welcome our host, Ms. Maria Victoria C. Espanio. Ms. Espanio is the chairman and CEO of PNA Grant Thornton. She is the 2018 Phoenix president and co-chair of Good Governance Committee. Ms. Espanio, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Our live audience here at New World, and to all of you who are joining us online by Zoom. Welcome to the 5th General Membership Meeting of Phoenix. We are streamed live as well in the Phoenix official Facebook page. Allow me to acknowledge again our generous year-round sponsors for this year. Platinum sponsors, KPMG, RG Manabat and Company. Gold sponsors, Ayala Land, Leadership Corporation and SGP and Company. Patron sponsors, BDO Unibank, PNA Grant Thornton, and San Miguel Corporation. To formally open the program, may I call on our president, Michael Arcaki, to call this meeting to order.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the 5th General Membership Meeting of Phoenix for 2022 to order.
Heavenly Father, you are our Creator, our light, our wisdom and strength. May we ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this forum today and every day as we accomplish our work in various tasks. We pray for joy, enthusiasm, and fulfillment in our work. May we conduct ourselves and our business dealings in an environment of fairness, respect, and compassion. May we ask you to enter the hearts and minds of our leaders and countrymen. Give them strength and wisdom so that they may lead us through these difficult times with honesty, integrity, humility, and selfishness. Finally, we pray that you extend your healing hand over us, our families, and our nation, and help us overcome this health crisis that has claimed so many lives, including the lives of many of our friends, family members, and colleagues. Please heal those who are sick and guide the hands and minds of our doctors and nurses as they care for them. All these we humbly pray. Amen.
I'd like to call on our president again, Mr. Mike Gordon, for the president's time.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the Phoenix board members present here, all the members and our guests. Welcome to our 5th GMM for 2022. Thank you also to the National Affairs Committee officers led by Chairperson Riza Mantalim and Vice Chair Romy Bernardo. And of course, to their liaison director, Attorney Francis, who's currently still out of country. And this GMM likewise brought to you by the Programs and Meetings Committee. Thank you to them, the liaison director, and our chairperson, Ned Jesus. Thank you, both of whom are here present. It has indeed been a very interesting and eventful month for this beloved country of ours. Around nine days, just 9 days has passed since our elections. And we have new national officials in place, and there have been local officials already proclaimed as of today. We are at a juncture where it is but natural to start looking into the future, both near term and long term, and to try to understand what the outlook will be. Given that for most of us here, business planning, budgeting, forecasting are always in the board and the management agenda. So today's GMM will be very insightful and indeed very relevant for us here and those dining in using this room. I would like to thank our distinguished set of guest speakers for accepting our invitation. They will help us understand what should be the lay of the land for the Philippine economy. Thank you, President Tony, Chief of NBF, for accepting your invitation. Dr. Philip Raya of the Monetary Board, thank you. Professor Nicolini, President, ADRI, thank you. And Mr. Bob Miralles, Managing Partner of Geneva. Thank you. Each of you will be introduced in better detail in our program. From an economic perspective, we are in a better place compared to last year. As announced last week, and maybe not paid too much attention to given the national elections. We grew by 8.3% economic expansion for the first quarter of 2022 relative to 2021. The relaxed pandemic restrictions appeared to have veered consumption back on track after the Omicron of earlier this year. In the first few weeks of January. And I'm sharing with you these selected stats in case you wish to remember them as you think of questions for our panelists later. So based on the information shared, the first quarter growth was driven by manufacturing, wholesale and retail trade, automotive repairs, and transportation storage, a lot of which directly affects most of us here present, as well as our general members. Household consumption grew as expected by around 10.1%, and government expenditure rose by 3.6%, and imports outpaced exports by around 5.2 percentage points. So as we transition into this new government, to this new reality and administration, I would like to remind all Phoenix members of the value propositions, which are captured by our acronym DNA. We hope that we assure you that the same values that we have enjoyed prior will continue on to the next administration and for years to come. If you know me, PA stands for development. So professional and member development. We will continue to roll out webinars and even seminars intended to share knowledge in order to increase our capacity for better performance and higher productivity. And as new bodies of knowledge become available, we will include them in our calendar activities for everyone's consumption. The end in DNA is for networking. So FinEx continues to be one of the premier organizations for financial executives, CEOs, government officials, and business leaders get to meet and interact in both formal and informal settings. This is our second GMM using a hybrid setup. So last month was the first one, April, and we continue to evaluate the proper format depending on the demands by members and on the update by our guest speakers. Let's hope that there will be more face-to-face opportunities for us this year. It is definitely more exciting and it's more fun to be interacting face-to-face and physically with everyone. Then third, for DNA would be advocacy. The A in DNA is for advocacy. We have shared our legislative advocacies intended to help spur the growth of the economy and move our capital markets closer to world-class status. There are 80 new advocacies that we can identify as a result of this GMM, but we'll see. But as outside of the GMM, as recent as yesterday, we were present during the third session of reform legislation for the 19th Congress Roundtable Discussion Series. And then number two, we continue to support the economic and infrastructure by the candidates. And then next, we are likewise studying several draft legislations and draft IRRs to submit our own comments and position papers to reflect the views of our members. So in relation to growing the regular FinEx members, I would like to continue my appeal for the continued recruitment of more members into FinEx. The board truly appreciates the help we have been receiving from the members and we look forward to your continued support. Please inform me or other FinEx officers and also or my one. If you have people you would like to nominate as members of FinEx, and again, thank you to everyone here physically present with us and to all the people who have dialed in to our Zoom account. Enjoy the rest of the program in the afternoon. Mabuhay ang FinEx.
Thank you, President Mike. Indeed, we have a very interesting set of speakers today, and I personally am looking forward to us so that I can get over heartache and experience responsibility. Seriously, it is nice to see all of you here. For the benefit of those joining us online, we have about 30 members in the room here at the world, excluding the secretariat. So we hope that more of you can join us next time around. Before going to the topic of the discussions, we'd like to first highlight some of the important activities that FinEx has been doing this past months. No? And in this relation, I would like to call on our chair, Ray, to discuss the launching of the second edition of the FinEx Research Book. Ray?
Good afternoon. The FinEx Foundation's Research Committee is proud to launch the second edition of the FinEx Journal. This is the journal. The entrance. of course, another important and relevant theme, which is financial technology or fintech, which is touching the lives of everyone today. The journal will continue to be an avenue for educators, experts, interest groups to share and publish their research, studies, and articles. On behalf of the committee members, our chairman, Romeo Choco, our liaison director, Mr. Romeo Bernardo, we are very grateful to the authors, contributors of these valuable articles. Let me call on them just to acknowledge the authors, and we can spotlight them in two. So we have Mr. Sazon, Mr. Lito Villanueva, Mr. Ruel, Mr. Henry Ruel Aguda, Attorney Jose King Dominguez, and Attorney Jose Ferrante Pamphilo. Attorney Mark Boriseta, Antonino and also a contributor. So I can say my name. Now the contributor. We also have foreign authors, but they are here to trade. That's right, Erande, you, and Camille Jasmine Aquino. We have Brian A. Diaz, another Phoenix member. And Phoenix member Om Loma and Mark. And finally, another Phoenix member, Eduardo G. Subulo. So we thank those contributors. Now we look forward to partnering with more institutions to generate awareness and support for this endeavor. It is our vision that this journal will one day become one of the respected platforms as we continue to evolve and innovate to be relevant to the present business environment. We will continue to work with authors, subject matter experts from various disciplines to deliver higher quality materials as part of the evolution of the Phoenix Journal. So again, thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Ray. I just discovered something about Ray. Aside from being an IT expert, next time, Ray, maybe you know. Okay, better boss. Now, as President has mentioned, Phoenix, notwithstanding the virtual arrangement, we have continuous with these different programs and have been introducing different innovative activities our members. Today, we are inducting new members who are interested to be part of the Phoenix family. May I call on Caloy Cervantes, Chairman of the Membership Committee, to formally introduce the new members. Caloy with us? Or will he be joining us personally?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but you're coming in garbled. Nonetheless, I hope you can hear me now. We will now induct the following new members. I shall call on the names, state the company position, and company and sponsors. The first one would be Richelle D. Mendoza, Financial Controller of Federal Land Incorporated. Sponsor is Jennifer Joyce Umali. Next would be Jacqueline U. Villar, Managing Partner of Mazars U. Villar Tadejo and Company. Sponsor would be Dulce Baterisna. So to add solemnity to this occasion, may I request all members please to kindly open your cameras, and may I call on our President, Michael Arcatomi H. Gorin, for their oath of membership. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Am I coming in clearly, Kaloy, right now?
Yes.
All right, so kindly raise your right hand. And to actually everything, those physically present, the members here, can you kindly stand up? Thank you. Oath of members, please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jacqueline Villar,
Having been accepted as a member of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines,
having been accepted as a member of the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines,
do hereby solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives.
do hereby solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
That I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws, that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I will Constitution and bylaws, that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God.
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God.
Congratulations and welcome to Phoenix.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to our new members. Thank you, Kaloy, and thank you, President Mike. Congratulations again to our new members. You may now sign up to the different committees that we have, and I'm sure there's one or two that will interest you. Our secretariat will send you the forms. Now, for the main event, with the recently held elections, the National Affairs Committee has submitted 4 experts to share their outlooks and predictions for the incoming administration. Mr. Calixto Totti Chiquiamco, President of Foundation for Economic Freedom, and Mr. Philip Medalia, DSP Monetary Board member, will talk about the economy. Mr. Victor Andres Guillen, President of Stratbase, and Mr. Roberto Bam Herrera, Managing Director of the NAO, will discuss the elections, what happened, and the political outlook moving forward. Allow me to call on stage Ms. Risa G. Mantaring, Chairperson of the National Affairs Committee, sponsor of today's GMM, to formally introduce our distinguished guest speakers.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It is because I have learned a lot just from reading their posts and listening to them. We have a packed agenda, so we have flash dividers on screen, we'll be flashing them so that we can spend more time listening to them, not just give short introductions. Following Phoenix tradition, I will introduce them in reverse order. Bob Pereira Lim is the Managing Director at the NAO, an international management consulting firm. He has advised firms not only with overall risk assessment at the regional and country level, but also develop and help implement market entry, divestment, and risk mitigation strategies. Bob has been covering political and business risks in the Philippines and in Asia since 2002, a role for which his previous stints in the government and private sector prepared him well. I always look forward to reading his astute analysis on the political and economic situations all over the globe. Professor Dave Domendir is the founder and managing director of the Strathways Group and president of its policy think tank, Albert Lasalle Institute for Strategic and International Studies. Concurrently, he is Philippine country head of Walker Group Asia, a leading strategic advisory firm specializing in the Asian Pacific. He's a recognized expert who is often invited to speak, and I'm sure you've seen him on TV many times during these elections. Dr. Philip Pedale is a noted economist and educator whose career spans more than 4 decades in the administration of 4 presidents. He has been a member of the Monetary Board since July 2011, and before joining the Monetary Board, he was professor at the University of the Philippines School of Economics, where he was also a former dean. He also served on the administrations of former presidents Joseph Estrada, where he was the cabinet secretary, and Fidel Ramos. We owe our current crop of economists to the tutelage of Dr. Medalla. President of the Foundation for Economic Freedom. The FEF is a non-governmental organization that is primarily engaged in public advocacy for economic reform. Together with other co-authors, he has recently published a book titled Momentum, More Economic Reforms for Sustained Growth. In his day job, he's a BPO and internet entrepreneur. Both volumes of Momentum, by the way, are highly educational and informative. Feeling ko tuwalino ko after reading them. In fact, a newsman who was interviewing me actually mistook me for an economist. So now I will turn you over to a real economist, and just like the rest of our speakers, one of the best in the country, Mr. Ronnie Bernardo.
Friends. Thank you, Lisa, you're too kind. I'm delighted to be your moderator to listen to such a knowledgeable panel, experts in their fields. As Lisa mentioned today, and also Lisa and I are fellows of the Foundation for Economic Freedom, an advocacy group for both economic governance and market-friendly reforms. I apologize in advance to the panelists when we speak brutal and limiting speakers to 10 minutes to give time for our Q&A. While we will be covering a wide field, I hope questions and the further discussion will focus on what the next 6 years will likely look like. Something that finance executives here have been pondering with immediacy and perhaps with some dread, given the elevated risk factors here and abroad. In my effort to crowdsource questions in advance, I received this from Balban Singh, a former IFC World Bank Director and now CEO of ICCP. And I quote, food and fuel stagflation likely next 2 years, grain, fuel, and fertilizer shortages imminent, bigger labor policy possible, debt to GDP over 65%, budget deficit looms, power crisis by 2023 to 2024, creeping South China Sea invasion. The administration declared continued BDE, job generation and agri redux, etc. How will this happen given recent history of insularity? I guess this is the kind of questions that will be addressed. Maybe if you will allow me at the end, I will ask a Boyakunda question, not just for the panelists, but maybe for our audience here. If you can describe in a few words, maybe no more than 5, what the next 6 years will be like. Then maybe if you like in 1 or 2 sentences. I will throw that question here. The audience here present and maybe in the Zoom. If you can text your answers, in the exact number somewhere that they can text to. Mike, Maybe I'll give you my number. Otherwise, pwede ba? Okay, it'll come in out later. Toti and I will give you an autographed copy of our book that was advertised earlier by Rita as a surprise for the answers that are most entertaining. This is also good for the people watching via Zoom and via Facebook. The number is 0917-805-8134. The question is, what will the next 6 years look like in 5 words or less? We can pass pieces of paper, we can do that way, if you rather do that way. With that, let me call on my friends and fellows in the FBF to the stage. Thank you.
Somebody will make a question. I'm taking off my watch and looking at the, my friend Robin Bernardo said he will brutally enforce the rule. So since he's my idol, I think he makes an ideal finance secretary. I have no choice but to follow him. But anyway, the title of my short presentation is the economy under the BBM presidency. Okay, my first thesis is that President Duterte, can we go to the first slide? Anyway, the first is inheriting a strong economic foundation. So I think maybe people recognize it, but President Duterte's administration has made the most number of economic reforms. So number of these, of course, create law, reduce taxes, the trade liberalization laws, retail trade liberalization, public support investment act. But there are, in fact, many others. People recognize it, including passage of personal property act, free patent law, and there's even already ruled that the nationality rule. I think so. That's the first thesis. Is that the Philippines is in a favorable geopolitical position. No? Can we go to the succeeding slides? There. Well, first of all, what are these favorable geopolitical conditions? One is a frontline state, southern is China, and secondly, the globalization will favor the Philippines. What is the globalization? Of course, is the movement, especially of Western companies to relocate away from China or Russia, which they feel are not conform with their democratic values. So the Philippines has very big potential to be able to exploit this development. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that they would like to have the trade move to quote unquote trusted partners. Secondly, the Philippines is the mining industry will be the industry of the future because of the demand for minerals for electric vehicles, and of course the demand for more electronic goods. And the Philippines is the fifth most mineralized country in the world. So we're the second biggest nickel ore exporter in the world. So we will, it's like having oil, except that we have the minerals here, nickel. Quite which is our arrival in the ASEAN. They are fast declining demographically. Their average age is 40 compared to the Philippines, 24 years old. And their working age population is shrinking quite fast. So because of these three geopolitical factors, I think the Philippines will be in a favorable position within the next several years. Next, can you move to the next slide? Okay. So anyway, there are three scenarios under the President Bongbong Marcos. Of course, the worst case scenario is we will reverse all the reforms or most of the reforms that President Duterte did, let's say the rights certification law, or putting back OPSF. That's the worst case scenario. If that's the worst case scenario, then of course you will see the Philippines could not grow as fast. We could probably go back, and progress. However, I feel that in terms of probability, I will only give it a 20%. The second is the in a way, the pessimistic scenario in that he does not do any reforms at all. He just writes on the reforms that President Duterte has named. I think with this, of course, because of, again, as I said, the favorable geopolitical factors of the Philippines and the reforms made by President Duterte, I think we will see growth rates of about 6% per annum per year. Just riding on the reforms that President has made. For example, liberalizing the transport and telecommunications industries. So that's in a way a pessimistic scenario. The optimistic scenario is that President Bongbong Marcos will not only build on this reform, but will even expand on those reforms. So that's the optimistic scenario. And why is there a possibility? I would give it a higher percentage, 40%, so because he will, do these reports. Well, in my view, optimistic scenario is that companies that started by the tax and the trends performing agricultural labor market in the most industry. How much time do we have? 5 more minutes or no. So anyway, just very quickly, why the third revolver? Why does seem to have an equivalent one day?
Close.
Well, anyway, so basically, it's 34 years after the Yellow Revolution, the business economic model of the Yellow Revolution is exhausted and is no longer working. So, poverty, countrysides are still amazing. Pervasive, high food prices. The next. So, what are the roots of our present problems? So, okay, I think there are three main problems the Philippines has. One is, of course, those constitutional the restrictions in the Constitution, Filipino only provisions. This has resulted in monopolies and oligopolies in industries. No? This has made our economy not competitive. And we have instead of really dynamic, innovative capitalism, we have city capitalism. The second problem that we have is, of course, the 1987 CAR, which has resulted in land fragmentation and also low agricultural productivity, and resulted in high food prices and in the persistence of poverty in the countryside. Third are, of course, labor market rigidities. Therefore, this has resulted in the flight of labor-intensive industries to Vietnam, Bangladesh, etc. Whereas in the Philippines, we have our unemployment and underemployment is close to a quarter of the labor force. So it has resulted in only low-paying service jobs. So anyway, the solution there is to amend the labor code. Next. Yes. Well, the BBM presidency is not invested in the 1987 Constitution and the CARD law, and it has no leftist in its alliance. It may be more open to amending them and continuing the next stage of reforms. I'm not saying that this is inevitable, this will happen, but I'm saying that based on the politics of alliances, it may be possible for the BBM presidency to initiate these reforms. Finally, we move on. So anyway, for the revival of chronic capitalism, I'm saying is that whatever it is, the trajectory of the economy will not be affected. There's a difference between corruption in the 1970s and ever corruption now. Our economy is now more open and tied to the global economy. Finally, if we go to the last slide. No, wait, sige. No more. I won't discuss that anymore. Can we move on? Next slide. But anyway, I'm quite optimistic. I guess unlike most other economists, I'm quite optimistic about the business environment for the next 6 years. So I think, especially with all these liberalization measures, and therefore I would encourage you to invest in the Philippines. Thank you.
I I don't have a power of presentation. Sleep whenever I don't have I see a speaker using. Okay. Sabihin ko nga, stay ako speaker sa mga hindi ng doctors and seconds. Let me just put it para hindi sila nagtatawa na pero hindi naman 15. 5 seconds. 5 to 7. 5 seconds. Sige, patient. And we are done about the people. Next one is, don't take that on the government. Sometimes the policemen will have payment terms. And judges that will sell decision. And of course, king application. Because that's very difficult. Then the second one has to do with monetary policy and fiscal policy should not will always be a source of uncertainty, but minimize the uncertainty that comes from that. Okay, so as far as the first and the third type of are concerned, we have done very well. The numbers speak for themselves, right? The last 10 years prior to COVID, the growth rate was 6.5%. If you start 100%, it was 5%. And since we adopted inflation targeting and set a target of 2 to 4%, average inflation was 3.1. So my point is, the current administration is not just inheriting reforms from the Duterte administration, the administration's long before. By the way, my boss is the only one not to contribute because he stayed only for 2 years. So, but he did not do much damage. Okay. The reason I say that is that, okay, so you got, by the way, most bank that has accumulated reserves, which by IMF metric is 2.3 times. What's the average?
Ito yung galing diesel.
Okay, why do I say that? It's like foreign exchange shortage. Foreign exchange shortage becomes a banking crisis, becomes a fiscal crisis, becomes an economic crisis. We don't have. We have enough reserves. In fact, only if you look at the IMF website, only 5 countries have better ratios than us. Russia, by the way, it did not help Russia very much because the US closed the reserves. Okay, but we're not going to invade Ukraine, so I think our reserves are safe. Okay, so that's the point. Then add to that the demographics. Where I grew up, 5 siblings, and we were the smallest family in our town. Right across the street was 9 children and children. But then as population dropped, fertility dropped, we are now in the middle of a very nice spot of the demographic cycle, which is labor force growing very fast, relatively fast compared to our neighbors, and the number of old useless people like me is just 5 to 7% of population. Of course, in 20, 30 years' time, that's all over. So we have this golden period whereas our neighbors have fallen. And the birth rate in Japan is 1.2. This really is way below the place. But Korea has the same problem, China has the same problem as well. So together, of course, with the fact that the rich countries are trying to diversify, reduce the dependence of China, that is a big plus for us. Okay, the next question is what can screw us up? The answer is, well, the typical answer again is, oh, the debt will bring us down. And of course, when you look at the debt, it's really quite shocking. The increase in the national government debt in the last 2 years, 2021, 2020 and 21, is 2.4 times the increase in the debt between 2016 and 2019. Okay, in other words, 2 years instead of 3 years, and yet 2.4 times. Now, the good side of it is some of the debt increase is really defensive borrowing. Because when you look at the deficit, it's smaller than the debt. They increase the debt. In other words, Secretary Dominguez is pre-borrowed because he correctly anticipated that borrowing conditions can be figured. So even that is a good inheritance. Okay, so what's the source of pessimism? Well, I read some of the flyers. And some of them were quite scary. One is, okay, make it illegal to have mandatory retirement based on age. The other one is no window. Now, I was quite scared by that until I read in the news this morning. The Secretary of Labor is my good friend, Benny Westman, the most employment-oriented Secretary of Labor right now. So that was my assumption is all this stuff, all this money stuff we're giving, written by people who had nothing to do with policy. They just have to put something out, and we can easily convince them that with the right people in the government, they can easily convince that's the wrong way to go. Can you imagine that? A lot of very companies, you cannot retire people based on age. When in fact, the big problem in this country is, of course, the young replacing the old. Young, you have enough young people. And of course, in Europe, they actually have to extend retirement age to go. Okay, here's the thing. So that was my point is I'm saying all this crazy stuff I'm hearing about the stupid intervention in labor markets is not going to happen because I saw who the appointed, I saw who the labor secretary is. He's unlikely to believe in that kind of stuff. Okay, of course, I can be wrong. Okay. Now, the other one that scares me is when because we know it costs quickly. And then man, if you bring down the price from 40 to 50, you have to spend 40. Because half the subsidy will be leaked. Because the most extreme kind of leakage is the Napoleon style, 100%. And then the state should restore production. By the way, the only way to justify the kind of subsidy is if you say, this will give me self-sufficiency. So what happens when the most about worse? Because of the subsidies, you now say no imports. But because the subsidies fail, supply doesn't rise. So you have wasted money and you have a rise prices. Okay, the worst of both worlds. So I hope somebody out there will say, hey, the reform of the federal administration and liberalization of price is a good thing. Don't reverse it. In fact, improve it. Replace the subsidies to inputs by subsidies to farmers, especially subsidies that will finance transition away from farming. Okay, the farm size is 1 hectare, you want to make it 2, you have to reduce the number of farmers. By the way, retiring farmers, and if it's necessary to have financial assistance to do that, do that. But I was told by my friends at DA, this is some reform very hard to do because DA has been dragging its feet in having a good census of farmers because they're afraid it will be used precisely for this purpose. And the favorite program, which is subsidizing inputs, will now be displaced by something better, but that something better is not better for them. Okay, so my other worry, of course, is debt. Now, I've looked at the numbers, they're scary, but the key to it is fiscal credibility and growth credibility. Fiscal credibility is less. But by the way, we have a long history of that. I went to this charts. The spread, when I was in Canada, the spread between a Philippine 10-year dollar bond and a US 10-year dollar bond was 6%. When we did all the reforms, we paid back 12%. We excluded, we included gasoline and electricity in that. And then we behaved this in a very fiscal responsible way. What happened? The spread became less than 1%. Okay, so we have essentially a very good situation. But I look at the US worst case scenario for the US, I think, is a 4% 10-year rate. Okay, so the spread is 1, then we can borrow 5 or 6. Now, the average interest rate is 6, but the average now is 4. And since the what's maturing is just 20-30% of the debt, and 10-20% of the debt at any given year, a big part of the average should be closer to 4% than 6%. Okay, now in that setting, see, even if we just pay just the interest, even if we borrow to pay the interest, the deficit is equal to interest payments. Really, the debt will be, the economy will outgrow the debt. It's very simple. If the economy is growing at 6% per year, 3% inflation, 9%. Okay, and if the debt is not growing, the debt's growing by the interest rate, 4%, 5%. The economy is growing at 9%, debt's growing at, the debt is growing at 4%. The debt will be outgrown, public debt will be outgrown with the economy. Of course, there's a necessary but not sufficient condition for debt management, because if the customs is very inefficient and BIR is very inefficient, it does not necessarily follow that revenue will grow as fast as the economy. And then if we don't have fiscal conservatism, it doesn't necessarily follow that expenditures will not grow faster in the economy. Okay, so my point is, there is really a path out of the debt situation if the economy is growing fast. Okay, so we need fiscal. And now, what about the Mandanas ruling? Even that has a way out. One way out of the Mandanas ruling is a very simple policy, which is government will give priority to public goods, where the local governments are willing to contribute, say, 40-50% of the cost. By the way, that will not just improve the financial situation of the government, will also lead to better public goods. If people are willing to put in money, if many of us are willing to put in money in the public goods, they are probably better projects than what the national government has chosen. Okay, so will the good scenario happen? Well, I don't know. It is the way I look now. It's almost time, right? So anything can happen, but at the same time, let's not rule out that there's enough public discussion. It's one of our strengths. There's enough civil society discussion by organizations like Phoenix. Of course, I'd like to mention ours, KDF. I think we get more press releases per capita than any organization in the Philippines. This kind of situation, in other words, the way public discussion about policy is handled could lead to what Totti refers to as the 40% scenario. Okay, so if you ask me for the Tagalog words to describe, ano ba ito? Bagong luma o lumang bago? Okay, lumang bago is not I understand, like sneakers. And it shocks me how an old new, because it has to be old, new. Jordan, Nike is 200,000, 300,000 pesos. So we are that kind of old new. The old, the good that's old is retained, and for the rest of the society, what's really in the market is other new good things. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've always been a great believer of data to look at where politics is, and thankful that I was right still believing data instead of selfie pictures and drone shots describe the election. So allow me to share data. I gave this title, Thinking Beyond Politics. Election is over, mandate is given legitimately, the process work. You might not like the results, but it's time to think strategically. Time to think that we need to compete as a nation outside of that. But we also need to remind ourselves why Bongo Marcos will be the next president of Egypt. So allow me to share data. Slide will show you that if you will be more specific about the question, go beyond the maybe the image of the president, specifically ask how do you perform? It's even below 50%. Fighting corruption, 51%. Defending the integrity of the territory at 48%. Increasing the pay of workers at 45%, creating more jobs at 44%, reducing the poverty of many Filipinos 36%, controlling inflation and planning. That's us March, and just looking at the third administration. I'm a political scientist by training, and I always say you have to listen to the public. And this is basically what the public experience. This is the challenges that will, and issues that the next administration will be inheriting more than the hype of their supporters in social media. Next slide, please. Consistent to a question that we asked, what are we looking for in a president? So we asked this in February at the start of the campaign. Again, economics. We need to address the economic consequences of this pandemic, but always governance is there. Next, please. We ran a survey after the filing of candidacy. Of course, our survey is comprehensive compared to what the media picked on, which is what was the rating. This was the first time that everybody saw Marcos at 47%. But there's more to that than what the survey wants, but we also ask the question, what do you want the next administration to do? Providing jobs, controlling the prices of basic services and commodities, reducing corruption in government, developing health infrastructure, developing educational needs. The reason I'm saying this, when you look at the Marcos campaign, and maybe they can just click, so I can click the other slide, is that they run a well-disciplined campaign based on data. It was run by a foreigner that I know who started with me, a PhD of political science, and it was a message discipline. I'll just whisper the name later to my panelists. She might not like to be burned. He's the one who runs his company, is a student of mine. But the point that I'm trying to make is they listen to the voters. That's why they do well. Now it's time, when they govern, they have to listen to the citizens. And that's where the challenge is moving forward. The private sector is seen as strong partner. And I wanted to share this because we know how challenging it was for some private sector activities. When President Duterte created an atmosphere of populist politics, he needed an enemy. After Noy and Pipilen Robredo, the private sector was there, of course, the communists also. Hopefully, we don't see that moving forward by June 30. We hope to see that the public is telling us there's a role for the private sector. And that role will be in digital infrastructure and other things like PPP. Next, please. Let's just click it para fast. Let's go on. So, but the reason I'm saying is that these are issues. We were able to track it. The incoming administration could have tracked it because they said the right thing. They positioned their candidate. You might say, where did they say the right thing? They said it in a targeted approach in different social media platforms. And sad to say, in PTV4 and SNNI, the Kibuloy channels, they were choosing where to say it, but they were saying it and it was passing through. So because of that, I wanted also to point out that that, and I will show data later. Next, please. Just to show, since I'll leave this with you guys. You'll be surprised, all these issues, Marcos was number one in terms of who can best address these issues. And surveys, let's not get mad at surveys, let's get mad at why do people believe this. That's a great challenge for all of us. This is the characteristics that the public was looking for. Untarnished characteristics, reputation, and not proud. Someone that has a clear program or platform of action. Someone that has extensive experience in governance. Let's spend a few seconds. Who is that person during this election? For the voters, that is Marcos. Next, please. He's the most honest compared to VP11. He has the greatest concern for the poor compared to VP11. He is the least corrupt compared to VP11. He has the clearest plan to address the country's problem compared to VP11. Look at those numbers. And can you imagine, I had an institute that focuses on West Philippine Sea. And I've never heard incoming president speak positively about our winning. But among for the public, he will be the best to defend the country against China. So you might say that there is a disconnect. Again, that's what the public believes. But now for me, that he needs to be made accountable for all this. He will be made accountable by the public as we move forward. Imagine these issues also. So when people were attacking surveys, I always tell people, don't read the first page. There are questions inside. Maybe that's why it was a failed presidential campaign for When you start attacking the surveys instead of not understanding the voters. listen to the voters, listen to the people. Marcos is perceived as one that can address more important issues. He can change many things for the better. He has more accomplishment. He's more authentic and he has better characters than any other candidate. Next, please. And I will tell you why, so you would know how dangerous what we are facing in the next 6 years. Because if they were able to build this image while for elections, what if they govern using the same information machine to create this image? And it's up for us. He won with the most dominant in advertising. He's the most dominant, which is my next slide, in social media. So what you saw, what you felt, it was totally different from the rest of the voters. Next, please. And this is the first election where social media was at par with TV advertising, even higher than public affairs news. So I was telling Ted Filon, who I was sharing primetime election coverage, I said, the future of mainstream news is really at stake because somebody is telling a better story. And that's why we will be electing incoming president. Imagine 50% and 53% TV advertising and news through YouTube or social media. In the Philippines, don't believe TikTok. It's Facebook and YouTube. TikTok is a far third. Twitter is a far fourth. Instagram is for those who try to make you. It's Facebook group, YouTube, one way without you knowing it. Imagine they're telling that story. I believe that Marcos told a better story because they understood the voters. Sad to say, maybe the story is not factual, but the story was told and it was accepted by the voters. Next, please. I can, or maybe I can stop here, but at least to give you the idea that Mark, because there's, I'll be leaving the rest of my slide. Thank you, Romy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Apologies, I said I will be total, but we'll continue the discussion about this later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Romy. You know, it's not easy to be invited to talk about politics and related to talk about politics. So, there's a slide before this, pending back up one slide. Okay, this is the history of the Philippine elections for the last 6 elections. Now, if you take a look, many of the people said, why did the Philippines forget who Marcos is? Question is, was there ever an EDSA vote? If you take a look, in 1992, FDR won 24%. FDR was supposed to be the intellectual, physical, and EDSA successor of Cory. Take a look, okay? In 1998, ERA won 40%, 37% with, 1998, ERA won with 40% of the vote, JDB with 18%. So sino dyan yung EDSA vote? It's not there. Go to 2004, ERA won 40% roughly of the vote, and FTJK, 2004, Gloria won with 40% of the vote, roughly again, and 37% with FPJ. Where was the EDSA vote? You can go through all of that. And the thesis that we have is the EDSA vote has never existed. Or, to be more precise, EDSA sentiments have existed, and they're valid. They're anti-corruption, against authoritarian rule, but we have not transmitted them politically to the political system, to the political vote. So, you hear a lot of people say, did the young forget EDSA? Did the young, etc. forget EDSA? If you go to the United States, in the 1980s, the Democrats were the white working class party. The white working class voted for the Democrats. Right now, it's the flip side. They vote for Republicans. 40 years is a long time. In the Philippines, this is one of the challenges we have. We do not have the institutions, the processes, or the mechanisms. by which ideas are transmitted not just from popular sentiment, but through parties. You go to Europe, you will hear the Greens contesting in Germany, aligning with the CDU, aligning with different parties that represent workers, etc. We don't have that in the Philippines. We have personality-based party politics. Okay, so that's the first thing. So when people say, and this is one of the things I'd like to put out, when people say that people have forgotten EDSA, I always say, was EDSA ever in the vote after 1983? Because 1983 was an exceptional time. It was a time when the political system, political elites of the Philippines, plus a larger number of the middle class or lower income classes, were able to surpass what we in politics call a coordination problem. The ability to coordinate your actions to arrive at the desired outcome, right? So, in coordination problem is, if you don't have a party, in Indonesia, you have had Golkar for the last 40, 50 years or so on. So you have had parties for a long time, and they're able to coordinate political action so that they achieve what they want to achieve. We haven't had that in the Philippines. If you take a look, if you're somebody who's struggling with traffic and you live in, let's say, Quezon City, it takes you 40 to 45 minutes. No, I used to live in New York and New Jersey. It took me a long time to get from New Jersey from my work in New York back to New Jersey. But people organized because they said, we don't want that. So they were able to have my travel time from 2 hours to 1 hour. And it was because people organized. Here, do you see the people struggling in EDSA to travel every day, organizing to achieve political ends? Has a mayor ever lost an election because of an inability to solve a common problem, flooding in Pasig, etc.? It doesn't happen, or it rarely happens, because there's a coordination problem among the people who suffer the negative effects. So that's the first thing. I will ask you to put many of these contradicting bubbles in the air. So the first thing is, the first question you have to ask yourself is, was there ever an EDSA vote? Because if there was not an EDSA vote, this election should not have come as a surprise. So next slide, please. So we have this election. It is the first time we have had a majority president since, Marcos won in the 1960s with a majority, or 1971, I forgot, 1969. So, when sometimes we talk as part of the political elites, we think there's a silent majority. The people, when there's a silent majority, the silent majority was actually a combination of Sara voters and Duterte. Sara Duterte voters, Bongbong Marcos voters. Okay, so we can parse this and analyze this as much as we'd like, but historically, when Marcos was first running, he had 24% of the vote. He had roughly 20% of the vote. Sara added this 30% of the Dutertes, and you might try to steal stuff from everywhere. You can figure it all out there. And then he comes up with a 60%. It's not forgetfulness. It's a continuation of the trend that we have been seeing for the last 20 years. So if Lenny had a chance, or would have had a chance to beat Marcos, she had to organize earlier. The fact that she came in late basically doomed her race. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. And why is this important? Okay, what is the political environment that Marcos will face? Okay, this is fragmentation. Okay, in the 1960s, you had nationalist Taliban. Probably might be able to educate me a bit more. But we now have a more fragmented political system. Okay, where you as a president have to deal with numerous parties, and not parties that don't represent parties, but represent personalities more than parties, right? So you will have to deal with Cynthia and Mark Villar, if you're the president, and whatever the interests of the Villars are. You will have to deal with whatever the interest of how many parties there are in the lower house. And this doesn't mean they're bad or good, but it is politics. And this raises the question, are we better served by having a parliamentary system going forward, given this fragmentation is happening? So that's the second thought I'd like to have. Okay, first is, we now have a majority president. The second is, you have a fragmented party and political system. Next slide, please. Okay. So if you have a fragmented political system, a majority president, what does that mean? You have a very powerful executive right now. And I don't mean a powerful executive in the sense that he's an autocrat or anything, but the executive will be much more powerful than the other branches of government. be able to influence the courts, maybe, be able to influence the legislature. And there are two things that will happen if you have a powerful executive. The first possibility is the executive is weak, in which case the executive will start to bargain with the different parties, with the different power brokers in the House and Senate, and nothing will get done because everything will regress to the least common denominator. Or on the other hand, if you have a strong president, they will have the ability in a fragmented system to basically dominate the political system. Now, if you take a look at Duterte, this is what made Duterte so powerful. Duterte was popular, he gained at 40%. He had an army of popular supporters. Some of them controls, but some of them just simply advocated in his behalf. And then he put in Sonny Dominguez, and basically he put his political clout behind Sonny Dominguez. So Sonny Dominguez would call Congress, and basically the members of Congress and the House knew that what Sonny Dominguez wanted, President Duterte would also want, and they had to go the line. That's why you got the political reforms or the economic reforms that Duterte had, even if arguably President Duterte did not have a full grasp of what these issues are. He trusted Sonny Dominguez, and Sonny Dominguez had no agenda other than what he wanted to do. So you had strong, basically, you had a strong executive using that popular leverage. Marcos will have that. So which leads us to the next slide. Next slide, please. Which leads us to the next question. In this system, therefore, what will be the most important question is what does President incoming? You have the term presumptive. He will become the next president of the Philippines. Okay? So what does Bongbong Marcos want as president of the Philippines? That is going to be the most important question. Why? Because he has the popular mandate. He has the 60% vote. He faces a Congress that is fragmented. And as I said, if you are a strong president and you use those political levers, you will basically get you what you want from this Congress, from this political system. So the question is, the most important question is, what does he want? And that is the challenge. Because right now, we all have theories. And we don't know which theory wins. Does he want the redemption of the family name? Does he want to consolidate political power for the longer term? We do not know. I do not know. I will not pretend to know. Okay? And finally, what will his policies be? And policies in government are a function of three things. They're a function of personnel, your preferences, and your politics. So your personnel, if you're a president and you want something done, but you get the wrong people, you won't get what you want because you have the wrong people. If you have the right people, but your political preferences are different from, or you don't have political preferences, then their preferences will weigh and will in. So Duterte might not have had much preferences in terms of the reforms that he wanted, but Sonny Dominguez said, this is what I want. So the personal issue was very important with Duterte and his choice of Sonny Dominguez as finance minister. I'll do this in 2 more minutes from me. Okay. So that's going to be the question for us given this political environment. So next slide, please. Yeah. Now we can just look at the Philippines in our own context. We compete with Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia for investment. In fact, what I will tell you is this. I am responsible for coverage of all of Southeast Asia. And right now, I'll give you that one. You see that upper right-hand line that is Pang Sway, that is in Thailand. They inaugurated that last year. That is the largest commuter train railway terminal in Southeast Asia. Okay, we don't even have anything close to that. Nag-aaway tayo over the Boma terminal in North Quezon. We can, how many years did it take us to solve that? Okay, that highlights Laos. That is Vientiane to the Chinese border of Laos, 422 kilometers, top speed 160 kilometers per hour. Okay, you can get from Vientiane to the Chinese border, and it is both rail and commuter. So you can ship goods in 4 hours over 422 kilometers. How long will it take you to ship goods over 422 kilometers in the Philippines? Okay, can we do it in 4 hours? That port is Patimban in Indonesia. They got it from a Japanese loan in 2017. They finished it in 2020. It will be 3.5 million TEUs, which will be larger than MICE. Okay, and they can grow it to 7 million by 2027. So if you are one of our clients and you are looking at Southeast Asia, yes, we have some advantages, which is people. Then you take a look at our power situation. take a look at our port situation, you take a look at our infrastructure, we start moving down the line, we start moving down relatively quickly. So we will still get some investment into the consumer sector because people have to spend money. But we cannot survive from, the preferences we also build an export industry. And right now we are competing in the very near term, in the next 5 years, because the US wants to diversify supply chains. They will not wait for the Philippines to get its act together in 10 years. They will demand the infrastructure in the next 2 to 3 years, which brings us back to the question, what does Marcos want? Will he have the capability to do so? So I will now answer Robbie's question of 3 words. My answer is, I don't know. Hindi ko alam. Okay, I am a political analyst, and I tell you, I do not know. I do not know. And it's not for or against Marcos. President Bongo avoided the debates. And it would have been preferable for him to attend the debates, not simply, so that he can be caught. It's not our goal. Our goal is to have a discussion. Because in the Philippines, that's one of the things we lack. Romy, one last minute before you kick me out. If you go to the US, 19 years, 15 years, you get, and you want to find out what the state of the country is. You have all these, you have Pew surveys, you have brokerage, you have all these think tanks talking, arguing about policy. Because the common tao cannot argue about policy because we do not have enough time. We have enough time working enough and trying to survive enough. If you go to Australia, the Laui Institute, you have all these different discussions. In the Philippines, the policy debates should happen. Should we have a parliamentary system of government? Should we change the constitution? Should we have a federal system of government? Given the fragmentation in the political system, we need all these discussions and debates, and therefore the unwillingness of the parties. And I have to admit, even I would have told them to show us as SMNI, we need to have a public discussion about what matters to the country. Because without that public discussion, and it is very much lacking, my answer will continue to be, I don't know. So clients will call us and tell us, who will the next finance minister be? I don't know. Where is he likely to come from? I don't know. What are his policies likely to be? I don't know. Why do I not know? Because not only do I not know who he is, I do not know the level of influence that he will have on the president. Sati Dominguez, everyone said he's been the president, he's been a friend of Digong since grade 7 years old, right? And he came back here. He knew he had no agenda or had a limited agenda in terms of what he wanted to do. That is the challenge right now that we face as people trying to forecast the political outcomes for the Philippines. There's a lot we don't know. Obviously, the system will constrain whoever there is, but if somebody knows what they're doing, they can actually bend the political system to their will if they know how to do it. So I don't know what they will do.
Thank you, gentlemen. A lot of attention here. Let me see. Maybe I've begun to receive some questions already, but maybe before I go to them, maybe we can divide the discussion into 2 parts. Maybe the first part is how did we get here? And I think Dindo presented a lot on that subject. But I recall and so did Bob. But I recall having read an article from Toti that seems to have a different kind of perspective on the people vote right. Toti, would you like to explain and what is exactly, I guess it's important moving forward as well. What is the role of social media, which I think at Dindo's point is key. But when I read the article of Toti, it's not, while it's important, it's not the driver. Toti, would you like to address that?
Well, the problem with blaming social media is that that's the narrative. Like in the case when Trump won, when he won, it's because of fake news, which is total disinformation. But if Biden won it, then they listen to you or read New York Times. The problem there is that it doesn't account for all the sociological factors that made Trump acceptable to the wide race, despite the fact that in terms of his personality, accused of sexual abuse or financial fraud, etc. I guess people still voted for him, right? Do you blame that on social media disinformation, or is it because they feel they are left out? Because of globalization. They were left out. there are questions of identity because of immigration, etc. So despite the fact that the characters of laws of Trump, people still voted for him. In fact, more people voted for him in 2020 ba yun, yung elections nila, than it did in 2016. So in the same manner, that's how I see our elections. Now, in other words, I think politically, Philippine voters have actually moved right. They have become more conservative. But of course, this is because of Duterte. No. What are the pieces of evidence that show this case? First, you can see now only, I think, in the party list elections, I think only one Kabatan party list has a chance of getting a representative. Whereas before, you had Bayan Muna, HCT, teachers, and then Gabriela, they used to dominate, and they used to get more than 2%. Now, they couldn't even get 2% or 1.6%. So that's one indication. Another indication why the Filipinos have soured on the left in general is, look, Cavioli even had fewer votes than mga Datu and Ernie Abella. They are virtual nobodies. And yet, a socialist like Cavioli, with its own organizations, couldn't even get enough votes more than them. So what I'm saying is that the people have really moved right, and this is because of the Duterte. And that is one reason why Bongbong Marcos won. And even I think Bob mentioned this, the ratings of Duterte, of Sara was about 33%, something like that, and Marcos was a little bit behind. But when they combined, he catapulted to about 60%. So this is because of really what they call Dutertismo, this unity of righteous forces. So I see the vote right now as a vote for the continuation of President Duterte's policies. So my expectation is that Bongbong Marcos will not deviate from that mandate, which is to continue the policies of Dutertismo, which is anti-communism, pro-business policies, fiscal conservatism, etc. Okay, having said that, there are some, again, mentions here that Bongbong could abuse the system, right? Because of the power of the executive and the supermajority has. I think the opposition will not come from the mix. I mean, politically, they only get one senator, right? All their other senator candidates didn't make it. So politically, they are very weak. So the check to President Marcos will be actually Sara Duterte. Because she would not want Bongbong Marcos to do something that would jeopardize her possible future as president. And remember, President Duterte did not endorse Bongbong Marcos because he's keeping the powder dry. He's reserving he knows the power of his endorsement. So he's reserving his position to possibly act as a check to the abuses, if ever, of the President Marcos.
Thank you, Tony. Philip, and then afterwards, I'll give Tino the right of joiner. And Bob.
Let me talk about something I completely don't understand, politics. First, I completely agree with Tony that this was really an election determined by the time. The other way to put it is if Sana had run, she would keep the point in the three-way race. So whoever got the and with some cruel fact of history, Yellow and Duterte. Right? So the probability that Duterte will support It was extremely low. So clearly, he showed that he didn't like, but in spite of the fact that he thought he didn't have the qualities, he couldn't go that. So I think in that sense, you're correct what he did. Question is, how do we get the yellows and the people who, well, maybe I call them the bronchies, together? And the other point is, okay, so we need a strong president because, but I think we should call them parties. They're not parties, they're factions, but they're not factions, factions with factions. So how do you, well, you have a very powerful president, and in case of Congress is easy. Give them one barrel and get the votes. So they're essentially jukeboxes. They play whatever song. So how do you make it less wasteful, less expensive? You have the parties to say, because some people there will have their own agenda to be part of the national day. But we are the only country in the world that has 26 people who are elected nationally. So we have a very good system. FBF sent me to a Heritage Foundation meeting. When I told that, you know what he said? Wow, you must have got some problem. I don't know anything about your country, but the fact that you elect 26 people. So the president has some skills to deal with this 24 divas. Okay, so maybe it's better that it's talking to Robin Padilla, that somebody as smart as JP. Robin Padilla will be cheaper. Okay, so that's why you need the scale of the president. In Congress is easy. Budget for each one. Then it's getting more expensive, not speakers. And so the cost is rising. And the media, the money went to his bank account, and he didn't know about it, so his assistant went to jail. So there has to be something about the justice system too. And in Illinois, I remember correctly when I was a student there, half the governors have gone to jail. That was their goal. This is a good outcome, they go to jail. So this is a country where you have people are not punished for bad society. So, and my answer is give governments involved. Programs. And that's why I think subsidies, because the subsidy give all the avenues for. So keep it simple and don't say join big religions only after fixed agriculture. That makes it never happen. I don't believe agriculture will ever be fixed. So the solution is don't let agriculture drive the economy down. Important that agriculture, because you're waiting. The reason it's gone for a long time, that is. So I think there is the other point of view of governance. What can be fixed? Given the political limitations of the country, and given the limitations, like you told now, that system that we have is very president-centric. Nothing works. So that's why they don't kind of curses. Because maybe cursing will make things better.
Excellent questions, Philip. And I'll give those questions to Dindo and Bob, but perhaps Dindo may want to give a very brief rejoinder to Toti on the role of social media.
My point about social media is not the reason why you want, it's a tool. It's a tool to tell a story that the worst time in the Philippines was 2010 to 2016. I don't know if you guys agree with that. But that was what has been moving around in social media since 2016. End of 2016, the target was Noy. He kept quiet. It shifted to VP Len Robredo. And from VP Len Robredo, it became 5 years of bullying. So for me, and I've been asked that she should not have been the candidate by Marcos. Because she will carry a package and she do that. Well, it's what happened. But I'll show you data also. If not for that unity, I can show the data now. Without that unity, Marcos could be beaten because it was a tight race between after the filing between Marcos, Sara Duterte, and running third, just 5 points back, is VP Len Robredo. So it's the unity. And to follow that unity, 47% in October, then first 20 to 47 at Bongo Marcos, then when Bongo stepped down in 56. Unity, because the candidate of President Duterte is Marcos. But he doesn't need to endorse him because if he endorses him, he will carry the baggage of EJK, Harmony. So it was a good strategy. So it's not Marcos hit him on drugs 1 day only. He hit Laila de Lima 6 years. So I'm just putting it from a political point of view. So it's a well-oiled machine. Here is a well-oiled machine will use social media now to push their own agenda. So we get ready for that kind of governance. But I'm hoping there's good substance to that. I'm hoping that there'll be a good cabinet members who will be placed there, and from there we can make them all accountable. The last few slides that I want to show is you should not squander the next 6 years because you might see value on what President Duterte did, but really it's about the disinformation. Well, I can do a session on that. Really, the next slide is whoever the enemy of the government is. That is information, and it will be people in this panel or your members. So just be worried. It's like quite about social media.
Thank you, Dino. Bob. What's our drop dead time? Now?
This is right. I think this is where he lost it. Because for the first time, he puts me right. Okay, I was talking to people saying, I always believe him. He said, the general charisma. And then, spending the Mitsubishi fare rather than the, okay, space added up. So it was not, it was not some self-inflicted wounds also. Now, the other problem is that I do not believe Bongo will go for the okay, he wants to see. Okay, I'm completely wrong about this. But then you will now see skirmishes already. Like, okay, do not put her in defense of the area. So it's not going to be either because there will be, it says the, what do you call that movie where you have the ring? Not ring, it's fine. So, no. So it's extremely important to see, right, we don't know. So we put on the first guess, see how the president.
In the next few minutes, maybe we can focus on what the next administration will do. Obviously, we actually need forums to be able to listen to all of this. But we only unfortunately have 5 minutes, I think, at that point. There is one question here, maybe after Bob says his speech. Maybe after.
Okay, I'll do it quickly. One thing we'll say is there's a resentment of the political elites in Manila. Okay, that is why the Duterte voters come into Duterte, and it is important that if you are in Manila, you walk these streets we have to understand what that divide is. And Professor Pinala is right. The yellows, rural folks. In the US, it's coastal versus heartland. It's educated versus not so educated. We have to find out where the political divide is coming from, because it is the source of the political divide. It's what causes people to have biases on what they believe. So when you see something on Facebook, if you have a bias, you will believe that, you will pass that to your friends, and that will reinforce your bias. We have to understand why that's happening. And Professor Vidal shouldn't apologize for not being an expert on things, because it is statistically proven is that the difference between men and women is that men will claim to be experts where they are not. Okay, that is the one thing. That is not one thing that men do.
After the elections, and we know that
Okay, it's statistically proven. Women will claim to be experts. Okay. So finally, last point for me is so the challenge, and this is the second point, that the political system right now is vulnerable. Not vulnerable, but in a sense, it depends on who the leader or what that leader will do because of its current characteristics. So the question of who Bongbong chooses as his cabinet and what they reflect in terms of the internal alignments of his preferences and how we will manage the competing political demands. These are all going to be very heavy questions for him, and that's why we are waiting for it. And the challenge is, it's been a week since the elections. In 2016, Duterte announced Sunny Dominguez on the night of the elections itself. He said, and he mentioned Artugade, etc., etc. It's been a week, we haven't seen that. So it's not really, something that we'd like to not see.
Okay, that's a very perfect segue for the question of our former president, Jean Pascual, who will compose your economic dream under the new administration. Maybe if I can modify this a bit, Jen, instead of naming names, maybe you can tell us what should be the qualities, strengths, history principally of the finance secretary and the rest of the economic team. If I can phrase it another way, Duterte had Dominguez, Pinoy had Cesar Purisima, and the economy went very well in both instances. So what can be the qualities of our next finance secretary? Anybody here to try to answer that?
No, historically, the finance secretaries have been compromises. So even Estrada, regardless of who you talk to, regardless of which president you look for, starting from the time of Marcos, the finance minister or the economic team has been somewhat acceptable to the markets. I think every president recognizes that if you mess up the markets, if you mess up the financial system, it is the same fear in Indonesia, it is the same fear in the rest of Southeast Asia. If you get a financial crisis, that you will pay for it with the political crisis. So I think that's the thing. And the second thing is, what are we looking for in terms of our clients? Two things: credibility with the president. In other words, hindi masusunod yung finance minister, that there will be no midnight cabinet other than what the finance minister says. The second is that the finance minister will have the ability to communicate with different constituencies, which include the banks, which include everyone within the financial system. So I think that's the best we can do.
And preferably valedictorians start from kindergarten.
Yes.
Ask me. Next, Tony. Anybody?
I want to answer the Robbie Bernardo.
All right. Good job. No, we'll answer.
No, I think the finance secretary has the political skills. It's because he has to deal with Congress, right? And it's to sell on the public on your taxes. So ideally, it's not just being a good investment banker or a banker. You have to have political skills. So of course, you have to have the trust of the president. So those are the two things that I think are important. As for the NEDA secretary, I believe that it's somebody who must be not an economist or not only an economist, but a lawyer and a politician. Because all our problems has to do with laws. And the solutions, again, lie in passing new laws to correct them. So once pointed out that there are three main binding constraints to the Philippine economy: the Constitution, the restrictions on foreign ownership in the Filipino person, the Constitution, the land reform law, And third are the labor market rigidities, or therefore we have to amend the labor code. So to me, ideally, the NEDA secretary should have a legal and a political background, because you have to get the public again to buy into those reforms.
Would you like to comment on that now? Otherwise, we can, I don't like, I have to adjourn at this point. We still have a contest, probably no more time for that, and we probably need to get another forum. Riza, Madam Chair, you're right there, the subject was quite large, and our experts here have an encyclopedia of knowledge to share with us. So we will have to have a take two. Thank you so much, everyone. Sorry, Lima.
Well, it was really an interesting discussion. I got the comment about new taxes. And I felt like, is this a deja vu, 1986 nationalization of government operation and new taxes, and all over again. Interesting comments on demographic. Previously, we saw the economic divide. Now we're seeing the political divide. And I wonder whether the demographic dividend we have been proud of is really working towards our advantage. I think the education component of these young people that we're hoping would really give the country an advantage has to be considered and addressed. So I second the comment, and suggestion, recommendation made by Ronnie that we should have a part two. Maybe once the economic team has been appointed, we can again invite them and include in our panel the distinguished speakers that we have today. So thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Robbie, for the very interesting discussions. And I'd like to call back on stage Phoenix President Mike to give the token of appreciation to our guest speakers.
Thank you, Maribel. So allow me to read our certificate of appreciation to be given to each of our speakers. So Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines presents this certificate of appreciation to our guest speakers in recognition for his generosity in sharing his valuable time, knowledge, and insights as a guest speaker in the 5th General Membership Meeting of PHINEX with the theme Transitioning to the New Philippine Normal, an Economic and Political Outlook, given this 18th day of May 2022 at New World Hotel Makati, signed by yours truly. So again, thank you very much to Mr. Calixto Toti Chiquianco. Next, Mr. Roberto Bob Herrera. Thank you. Next, Professor Victor Andres. And then last but not the least, Dr. Felipe Philip Medalla. So that completes our general membership meeting. I will let's all adjourn. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of Reason. And then the rest of the members pass.
you'd like to join the stage.
And good evening.
And other NAP members.